Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Alex Dodds. I'm the Deputy Communications Director for Smart Growth America, and I want to welcome you to this call to discuss Measuring Sprawl 2014. For those of you who are logged in to the webinar portion of this presentation, you'll be seeing some slides here. If you're joining us by phone, that's also great. If at any point you have a technical problem, you can dial in to the 1-800 number on your screen. That's 1-800-750-5845. The full copy of this report is available on Smart Growth America's website at www.smartgrowthamerica.org/measuring-sprawl. You'll be able to see the full methodology as well as all of the cities and regions that we're going to be talking about today in that PDF. We have a very robust program for today's call. First, we're going to be hearing from Ilana Preuss, the Vice President and Chief of Staff at Smart Growth America, and then from Reed Ewing, Professor at the University of Utah and the researcher at the Metropolitan Research Center. Smart Growth America partnered with the University of Utah to produce this report, and these two, Ilana and Reed, are going to be talking about the report and its primary findings. Then we're going to be joined by several additional speakers and a panel. First is going to be David Berrigan from the National Institutes of Health, and then we're going to hear from several people from regions that are included in the report. Elizabeth Tyler, Community Development Director of Urbana, Illinois. Bill Fruehling, Principal Planner for the City of Madison, Wisconsin. Ken Moore, the Mayor of Franklin, Tennessee. And Ralph Schultz, President of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce. To get us started with an overview of the report, I'd like to introduce our Chief of Staff, Ilana Preuss. Ilana?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Alex. My name is Ilana Preuss, and I'm the Vice President and Chief of Staff of Smart Growth America. We're here today to talk about Measuring Sprawl 2014, which is really a first-of-its-kind study that updates how we grow in our communities and how our regions are growing, and it examines what this means for America's families and for our communities. The original report was released in 2002, and that was one of the first comprehensive measures of sprawl in the United States. Today's report updates that model, adds many new databases, and expands the rankings to include 221 major metropolitan areas in the United States. As you'll hear on this call, some places in the U.S. are sprawling, and some places are building in compact, connected ways. And the difference between the two strategies has major implications for the day-to-day lives of everyone in America. It has implications for our health, our household costs, our transportation choices, and for our ability to move up the economic ladder. It's important to look at where development happens in our communities. Each time elected leaders invest in roads or sewer lines or decide where to approve new development, our personal daily costs, our health, and long-term economic opportunities are impacted. And not all development is created equal. Some types are more expensive for taxpayers and consumers. Some types are less expensive and, as this report shows, can also help Americans to be healthier, safer, and have greater opportunity and more choices. That's a big part of why Smart Growth America does the work that we do. We help towns and cities grow in ways that support their individual residents, have strong public budgets, and strong regional economies. Measuring Sprawl 2014 is an opportunity for us to celebrate the communities that are doing well and to share ideas for how every community can do it even better. Communities across the country are adopting policies to support better development, fiscally responsible development, and development that is in high demand. This research will help more people understand why smart growth strategies are so important and to create their own strategies for success specific to their own unique needs. To talk about the findings of this impressive research, I'm going to turn it over to the lead researcher on this report, Professor Reed Ewing. Reed?
Thanks, Ilana. As Ilana mentioned, for this report, we created a new and improved measure of sprawl. That measure includes four main factors: development density, low density we equate to sprawl. Land use mix is the second factor. Separated homes, from shopping, from workplaces, we equate to sprawl. Street connectivity, disconnected, cul-de-sac-y streets, we equate to sprawl. And then activity centers, the lack of a strong downtown and strong town centers, we equate to sprawl. Based on these factors, we evaluated and scored development in each major metropolitan area in the United States, plus all the metropolitan counties. We then combined those factors into a composite score for each region. That composite score is the ranking in today's report. So based on our analysis, and I'm referring now to the metropolitan rankings, the least sprawling or most compact metropolitan areas in the United States are at the top of the list, not surprisingly, New York. Number 2 is San Francisco. 3, Atlantic City. 4th, Santa Barbara. 5th, Champaign-Urbana. 6th, Santa Cruz, California. 7th, Trenton, New Jersey. 8th, Miami, Florida. 9th, Springfield, Illinois. And 10th, Santa Ana, California. And starting with the most sprawling and working our way up from the very most sprawling. The most sprawling is Hickory, North Carolina. Second is Atlanta, which in other rankings we've done and others have done always ends up at the sprawling end of the spectrum. Before that, slightly less sprawling is Clarksville, Tennessee, Prescott, Arizona. Nashville, Tennessee is next most sprawling. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, next most sprawling. Riverside, San Bernardino, California, then Greenville, South Carolina, Augusta, Georgia, and Kingsport, Tennessee, in that order of sprawlingness. And again, we've compared places based on something like 28 different variables to arrive at these rankings. You can see the full ranking of all 221 metropolitan areas in our full report, which I understand is now posted on the NIH website. That's not the end of our analysis, though. We wanted to know what these scores mean for people who live in these communities. So we examined how sprawl scores relate to the number of quality of life factors that we've looked at. We found that people in compact, connected areas have greater upward economic mobility than their peers in sprawling areas. That is, a child born in the bottom 20% of the income scale has a better chance of rising to the top 20% of the income scale by age 30 if they, again, live in a more compact place rather than a more sprawling place. And these are based, of course, on models and averages. The second thing, we found people in more compact, connected metropolitan areas spend less on the combined expenses of housing and transportation. As others have reported, housing costs are higher in compact, connected areas. But these higher costs are more than offset by lower transportation costs. So the net effect of housing plus transportation is that the compact places are slightly less expensive. It's not a huge difference, but it is statistically significant. Next finding, people in more compact, connected metropolitan areas have more transportation options. People in these areas choose to walk more, take transit more. They own fewer cars, which is one reason transportation is more affordable, and they spend less time driving than do their peers in sprawling areas. And finally, people in more compact, connected areas have longer, healthier, and safer lives. These are the findings that, in a sense, are the most edgy. Life expectancy is greater in compact, connected areas and measured in years. The risk of fatal auto collisions, people's body mass index, which is a measure of overweight or obesity, and air quality all contribute to the difference in life expectancy between the compact and the sprawling areas. All of this information is available in our full report. and even more details about our methodology are available in the full research available now from the NIH website. Some of our most notable findings are that in that last point about sprawl's relationship to health and safety, that's where the methodology rises to its highest level. To talk more about that, I'm going to turn this over to David Berrigan, Program Director at the National Institutes of Health Division of Cancer Control and Population Sciences.
Thank you, Reed. And my colleague, Dr. Zarya Tadilovich, and I are very pleased to have been able to support today's report and are delighted to join with Smart Growth America and Dr. Ewing to discuss the results of this work. The mission of our division here at the U.S. National Cancer Institute is to reduce the risk, incidence, and deaths from cancer, as well as enhance the quality of life for cancer survivors. Much of our work is based on a socio-ecological model of behavior that emphasizes the potential for diverse social and contextual factors, such as urban sprawl, to influence cancer and cancer risk factors. There's a growing literature exploring the potential relationship between sprawl, cancer-related health behaviors, and health outcomes, including cancer mortality. Dr. Ewing's research on urban sprawl is an outstanding example of this work. We are especially interested in research concerning the relationships between urban form and both cancer risk factors and access to cancer services. Our division has investigated the role of diet, weight, and physical activity in cancer risk and prognosis, and we're very interested in how better development strategies can help people stay healthy and active. So by creating a new and more comprehensive sprawl index, Dr. Ewing and his team, especially Shima Hamidi, have gone a long way towards establishing a valuable new set of analyses examining longitudinal associations between sprawl and health. So I'm really excited about the coming years of research on this new resource and Dr. Ewing's results as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, and thank you also to Reed and Alana for talking a little bit about this report and its significance. And thanks, as David mentioned, to Shima Hadimi for her research contributions to this project as well. Right now, we're going to switch tracks a little bit from the research angle to a more local, on-the-ground angle. And we have a panel of folks who are going to be talking about their communities and the development that's happening there. First up is we're going to hear from Elizabeth Tyler, the Community Development Director for the city of Urbana, Illinois. Urbana ranked number 5 on the national scale, on our national rankings today. And Elizabeth, I've got a question for you. What has the city of Urbana done to build in compact and connected ways, and how do your efforts fit into the larger region?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and I would also just like to say it's a complete honor, and we're very delighted to have measured so well in the new report. And I believe it's truly a reflection of our community values, which makes it that much more meaningful. And to give folks a sense of the context, we are the home of the University of Illinois, so that's Go Illini. We're a twin city with Champaign, and we're about 2.5 hours south of Chicago in Illinois, downstate Illinois. In terms of what we've done to help achieve the score, I think that our reliance and our commitment to comprehensive planning has been very important. Urbana had most recently updated its comprehensive plan in 2005, and one of the most prominent policies in that document is that we will grow in a compact and contiguous manner. And there's quite a bit of emphasis in the plan and in our many programs on preserving our in-town neighborhoods. And these have that dense, somewhat dense character and great proximity to workplaces, including the university and some of our local hospitals and other workplaces that I think helped us to score well on the land use mix and the development density as well as the activity centers. We have grid system, a discontinuous grid system. We have small blocks, small lots, and I think that helped as well. From the comprehensive plan, we've developed other policies, including a complete streets policy, and we've retrofitted many of our streets. We have an award-winning bicycle master plan, and our bronze bicycle-friendly status community now going for silver and hopefully gold and platinum in the future, as well as we have a climate action plan. So all of these plans and policies have come out of this commitment to comprehensive planning, which our citizens really embrace. And of course we have a very active citizenry and very savvy with the university and a lot of international individuals and influence in our community. In our downtown specifically, we adopted a updated downtown plan in 2012, and we're working on a catalyst project around our urban creekway known as the Boneyard, which is a great name. And what we want to do is beautify that creekway and as well as do some complete streets modifications, and that is nearing completion. And our goal there is to attract more businesses, more residents to the downtown, more vitality, and we would look for the next ranking in the next report that maybe we would be the most compact small city in America. That would be fantastic. On the regional level, we do have great support in our metro area and from our twin city of Champaign. The Champaign County Regional Planning Commission is very progressive. They're true leaders in the field, and their long-range transportation plan has always had a true multimodal focus and a real focus on sustainability. We're able to identify indicators and to measure ourselves against things like increasing percent of bicycling, reducing crashes, and we do very well in those areas. I have to mention also our mass transit district, the CUMTD, has always had a multimodal emphasis and not just on buses. And they as well are award-winning. They allow the students and seniors to ride for free as part of the university registration, and they actually have over 12 million riders a year, which is really remarkable because we have just over 200,000 residents in the county. And Champaign also has emphasized in-town development, and I think that's really helped with the density, especially in the campus town area near the University of Illinois, where many of the students are living closer to campus, and the auto ownership of students has dropped dramatically in recent years, which is really remarkable. So those are the main points I wanted to make, and just again to remark how thrilled we are, and looking forward to continuing to be a leader for small cities in America.
That's fantastic, Elizabeth. Thank you so much, and I'm sure you're not the only city representative listening in today who would like to see their sprawl score improve for the next report, maybe 10 years from now. Next, we're going to hear from Bill Fruling, the principal planner at the City of Madison, Wisconsin. Madison was ranked as the most compact and connected of medium-sized metro areas. As Elizabeth also mentioned, our report today includes rankings of the most sprawling and compact small, medium, and large metros in addition to the large national ranking. So Bill, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about Madison's activity centering score. You guys did very well on activity centering, which looks at, in part, the proportion of jobs and people within the metropolitan area's central business district and other employment centers. Can you talk to us a little bit about how your work is helping to support development in downtown Madison?
Sure. Thank you for having me today. I think it's we're very happy to be recognized for all the hard work we've been doing, and I think in Madison this ranking, like Libby was just saying about Urbana's ranking, I think is really reflective of our community values. And I think one of the ways that we've been supporting more compact development is by recognizing the importance of a strong core. And we really devote a lot of effort and energy into making sure that our downtown is strong. One of the ways that we've done that is by our recently adopted downtown plan that was adopted in 2012. in our downtown plan process, we really took a strong look at the various neighborhoods and districts that comprise the downtown, and we worked to make sure that there were places to go and things to do in each of those areas. And then we really considered how they were all connected and how they all worked together for the betterment of the greater downtown. We focused on creating a downtown where people wanted to be, whether it was a place to live, a place to work, or just a place to visit and spend some leisure time. And I think one of the things that we really heard through that process is people kind of want the same thing. They want to be close to amenities and kind of where the action is, whether they're looking for a place to live or maybe an employer looking for a place to locate a business. People are all kind of looking at the same thing. So we understand that density can really help support that. So our downtown plan identified a number of areas that we felt were appropriate for redevelopment or infill. And our plan really set the stage for and the types of development that would help achieve our overall vision for the downtown. I think our downtown plan identified areas that would accommodate up to 4,000 to 5,000 new residential units and 4 to 5 million square feet of additional commercial space. And we thought it was important to identify those growth opportunities in the downtown plan so everyone could understand how that all would fit into this bigger framework instead of just considering projects on a case-by-case basis. Then I think it was important that that was followed by our new zoning code that really codified a lot of the recommendations that were in the downtown plan. So we've done a lot of planning and we set up the framework, but quite honestly, we've also been pretty fortunate of the timing of all that work kind of coming right as the economy was starting to improve. We also have had a major employer that is located in a suburban community that's really been helping drive a lot of our growth downtown. Again, even though that company is located in an adjoining community, a lot of the employees and a lot of the people that are coming to Madison to work there or at similar types of businesses are choosing to live downtown or in near downtown areas.
Great. Thank you so much, Bill. That's really helpful to hear. We're going to hear next from two people from the Nashville-Franklin metro area in Tennessee. The first is Mayor Ken Moore, who's the mayor of Franklin. And Nashville-Franklin is one unified metropolitan area in this report. And unfortunately, this Nashville-Franklin scores low on the ranking. Out of 221 metro areas, Nashville-Franklin is number 217, so it's down there pretty low. But Mayor Moore, as mayor of Franklin, why do you think it's important for your town to move up the list on this ranking? And what public policies or how are you working as an elected official to help Franklin move up in its ranking?
Well, thank you for the question. The current model is certainly unsustainable, and I think our future economic prosperity and quality of life depend upon us changing the way we've done things. This is a regional issue. It's not just Franklin. It's not just Nashville. And we've attacked it on a regional basis through our Metropolitan Planning Organization, our Mayor's Caucus, to ensure our future. Currently, the City of Franklin is undergoing a comprehensive transportation plan which is going to look holistically at infrastructure and marrying it to land use plan for the future. We've invested heavily in our downtown with streetscape and downtown planning. We have a vibrant, alive downtown in our historic core. We're working on connectivity. We have a complete streets policy. And we're also working on infill in our existing downtown because we realize that existing infrastructure is much cheaper to use than building out in a green field.
That's great. Those are all fantastic public policies, and it's interesting to see how public policy and development can work together in a ranking like this. So we're also joined by Ralph Schultz, who's the president of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce. And Ralph, I'll ask you a similar question. As the president of the Chamber of Commerce, why do you think it's important for the Nashville area to improve its sprawl score? And what efforts are you at the Chamber doing that you think will help move towards this?
Well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be a part of this, but also thanks for the research, because this research is helpful to us as we engage people in improving that sprawl score. I would start off by saying that improving that sprawl score is really all about prosperity and the marketplace. The marketplace wants an improvement in that sprawl score. And if we're going to have a prosperous region, and it's great to be on here with Ken Moore, because Ken is the chair of the Mayor's Caucus that's taking these issues on a regional basis. We're all about building prosperity in this area. So let me give you a few thoughts. First of all, by almost any economic measure, this is a booming region. Since 2000, our population's increased 25%. Over the last 3 years, our job growth rate has been in the top, either the top or the top 3 in the country. And there's a specific process that kind of drives that. First of all, this region has a reputation for being a prosperous place. And part of the reason that our job growth has been so great is because we have a lot of in-migration of workforce, particularly in that 18 to 35 demographic. And when you look at the studies, that in-migration is usually coming from places that have transit in particular, and they're coming to a place that is short on transit and high on sprawl or separation. So if we're going to continue to attract that workforce, which by the way also attracts employers, then we're going to have a quality of life that measures up. So in some ways, I kind of emphasize what's been said before. When you look at our cost of living, we're a lower than average cost of living area. We're a low tax area. But when you take housing and transportation and combine them as expenses to an individual household, you find that we move from the top of the list to the bottom of the list against our benchmark cities economically. So if we're going to continue to attract the workforce that attracts the job creators, that creates the prosperity, we're going to have a quality of life that matches the market demand of the workforce. And as one of the speakers said earlier, we know that workforce, especially in the 18 to 35 demographic, isn't looking at acreage and square footage anymore for lifestyle. They're looking for amenities and proximity. Transit, which we are just beginning to undertake a rapid transit project, is pretty key to that. So, what you see us doing and working with the area mayors, many of which, as Ken Moore said, are working on that vital town center in their part of the region. We're working with them on redevelopment policies and policies that encourage density and connectivity through transit. We're working on rapid transit connections throughout this region, which would start with a development called the AMP in the core. We're working with the Metro Davidson County government on their Nashville Next 30-year plan for zoning and planning policies. And we've seen an explosion of residential growth in the core of Davidson County because there are so many amenities located in this core. So your research is going to be a great addition to our discussion here. The opportunity to move up your rankings is going to be a great goal for the community and the region to undertake. And we are fortunate to have public policy officials like Ken Moore who see the need for this denser lifestyle and the connectivity that comes from it.
Well, that is actually an excellent transition, and thank you, Ralph. Right now I'd like to turn it over to Alana for just some final concluding remarks.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to all of our speakers today, especially to Professor Reed Ewing, but also to David Berrigan, Elizabeth Tyler, Bill Fruehling, Mayor Moore, and Ralph Schultz. Your additional thought and your work with this idea on the ground makes an enormous difference to the lives of everybody in your community and allows other communities to learn from your experiences. As these speakers said, it really takes work on the ground to make a difference, but it is all possible. It is, in fact, the everyday decisions of our elected officials and of our community leaders about where the investment goes, about the policies put in place that direct all of the development within our communities. When we have the opportunity to include new development in town, where we create a diverse type of housing and we accommodate jobs and different kinds of uses within our neighborhood centers, we can improve on creating more compact and connected places. When we increase transit options, we can get the same outcome. When we look at creating or adding to existing community or neighborhood centers of activity and building on those great assets in our own unique ways of our region, then that can improve it as well. And when we look from a policy perspective at updating our zoning code to reflect this fiscally responsible development and the demand that's there today, that it makes a big difference in terms of, as Ralph said, the competitive edge of our regions to in fact attract the employers and the employees that we want in our region. And I think it's important to remember that, as we said at the beginning and as Reed summed up for us at the start, that these kinds of development decisions have a very strong connection to our daily lives. Places that are more compact and connected have greater upward economic mobility. People spend less on combined expenses of housing and transportation. People choose to use transit and walk more. People live longer, have fewer fatal car crashes, and have lower body mass index. And it is important that as we work in our communities at looking at future development, that we take all these pieces into account to make sure that we are creating the strongest, most diverse, most economically vibrant regions that we can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ilana, and I'll echo Ilana's thanks to all of our panelists today. Your comments have been really great to hear. At this point, we'd like to open it up for questions and answers. You can type your questions into the webinar window on your screen for those of you who are following along on the webinar. Or you can find us on Twitter. You can tweet at us at SmartGrowthUSA or using the hashtag Measuring Sprawl. And I know that we already have several questions in the queue from our webinar participants, and we'll do our very best to get through as many as we can. The first one is for you, Reed, and it's probably one of the most common questions that we get. How are the metro regions defined? We talk about larger metro regions. Can you tell us a little bit about specifically how they're defined?
They're defined by the U.S. Census Bureau, and they are supposed to capture economically unified regions of the country. So there are certain criteria with respect to commuting from the out counties to the central county that factor into their definitions. One of the things that made our study harder was the fact that the census redid all of its metropolitan boundaries in 2003, and it went from a system that had primary metropolitan statistical areas and consolidated metropolitan statistical areas to one with metropolitan statistical areas and with metropolitan divisions. So we could not compare 2000 to 2010 as we would have liked. What we did instead in Chapter 9 of the report, which is now available to you, is looked at urbanized areas, which did not experience the same changes in definition, boundary definition. So you can compare the urbanized areas in 2000 to 2010. For different purposes, we use different geographies. In fact, we posted on the NIH website metropolitan sprawl measures, county sprawl measures, urbanized area sprawl measures, and census tract related sprawl measures. So we're hoping that researchers around the country will, as they did a decade ago when we published our first indices, use the indices to explore the costs and the benefits of sprawl. And there are some benefits, as we found in our report, but more costs than benefits.
And as Reed mentioned, there's much more data available to researchers who are interested. If you visit smartgrowthamerica.org/measuring sprawl, you can find a link to the National Institutes of Health website where you can find all sorts of data at your disposal. The next question that we have is from Twitter, and I'm going to pose this to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, one of our listeners asks, infill is great on Main Street, but what are you doing to allow infill adjustments in residential zoning?
Well, that's a great question, and that's where we get into the nitty-gritty of our zoning ordinance and how we allow for people to continue to invest in their older homes or in the older residential neighborhoods while keeping that quality and that character. And what we've done is really taken each neighborhood and studied it individually and worked with the neighbors, and in 3 different areas identified overlay districts where we would have a design review. So it might be that you could rebuild, but it's going to undergo a review to make sure it meets some design guidelines. And I think the other thing we've done is we have tax increment finance districts that cover some of our commercial areas and help to incentivize that redevelopment and those improvements in our core. And honestly, if you look at the amount of time that City Hall spends on reviewing development and working with neighborhoods, a very high percentage is right in our core areas and our core neighborhoods. And I think that that's reflected in the fact that we've been able to continue to improve in town and not continually move outward into the agricultural areas and the green fields.
Great. And
so that would be my response.
That's great. Do any of the other panelists want to talk about infill in residential zoning?
I could chime in quickly in Madison. This is Bill Fruling again. I think one of the things that we did, I mentioned about our zoning code following our downtown plan, but I think that was really important when we redid our zoning code that's been in place for just a little over a year now, because our prior zoning code was adopted in 1966, and it was a very suburban model. And so our new zoning code has a number of different flavors of zoning districts, particularly in those residential areas, that encourages some higher density and really sets out some design standards, I think, that are really important to making some of those projects fit better in the residential neighborhoods, particularly the lower density neighborhoods. We've had a number of very controversial projects, multifamily and mixed-use projects in some of those areas, but we've really seen a lot of what I would say is quite successful development, more in close proximity to some of our neighborhood commercial areas.
Great, thank you. One of the questions that we've gotten from our webinar participants, and I guess this is a good question for you, Reed, or Alana, please jump in. It seems like there are some counterintuitive rankings in here. I know in particular Washington, D.C., which is a very dense area, ranks number 91, which seems pretty low for a major urban center in the country. Can you talk a little bit about why that might be the case, if you see your region, why it might not be quite as high or as low as you would think?
Yeah, I think I can, and that's one of the reasons I mentioned the urbanized area rankings, because they are probably more intuitive. What happened using, I'm comfortable with the fact that we use the census MSA and metropolitan division boundaries, because researchers are going to be using the sprawl measures with other data sets that often use metropolitan areas as their basis. But it does lead to some funny results. And I'll give you a couple, and Washington might be one. Washington has a density factor or density index, which is well above average for, and I'm talking about now Washington, Arlington, Alexandria per se, well above average in density. It is well above average in mix, well above average in terms of centering or strength of centers, and also street accessibility. Separately, the Metropolitan Division of Bethesda, Rockville, and Frederick is also above average in 3 out of 4 of those. So Washington didn't do too badly if you look at the divisions. But as I mentioned before, we got some funny results. Portland, for example, in our 2000 rankings had been one of the most compact of the metropolitan areas, and it is now well down the list in terms of compactness. And what happened is the census in their new boundary definitions included all of Vancouver, which basically the area outside the urban growth boundary for Portland, which greatly lowered its ranking. Detroit's another example where the exact opposite happened, where a metropolitan division was defined, which is much smaller than the old metropolitan areas. So it has a lot to do with the census boundaries. If you are kind of unhappy with where your metropolitan area ranks, take a look at your county rankings, which are going to be related, but not as closely related as you might expect to your metropolitan rankings, because they involve different variables and they look at different geographies.
And I think, just to add to that, I think it's interesting if you pull out D.C. as an easy example, where we have the District of Columbia also pulled out as a comparable to a county, where it actually, just the city ranks number 6 overall. And that does reflect what's been going on in D.C. over many years, while at the metropolitan scale, the metropolitan statistical area does go out to include parts of West Virginia, and that in many ways does reflect what is going on outside of the center city, where there is an extensive amount of sprawl going on in the farther reaches of the DC area.
Great. Thank you, both of you. The next question is from our webinar listener, and it's for Ralph. Ralph, I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about the reaction from the development community to these kind of things. Obviously, it sometimes seems cheaper for developers to build outside and to sort of lower an overall region's sprawl score. Can you talk a little bit about how you've worked with developers and to support development downtown?
Yeah, actually, developers are more interested in a denser environment and a transit-connected environment. What we've really had to do is work to change a conversation in this community. If you look at several of our development measures, you'll see an aging housing stock, you'll see aging commercial stock, and a lot of that stock, that design is non-dense. So what we've really had to do is we've really had to work with developers and public officials here in metropolitan Nashville to create a conversation that encourages investment by encouraging denser design, greener design, and design that's in greater proximity to things people want. And that's both on the residential and the commercial side. So we created a redevelopment task force that was composed of public officials and developers, finance, bankers, etc., to talk about how we could undertake the conversations in these locations where redevelopment needed to take place. There are TIF opportunities that are provided. In fact, that's one of the highest priority uses for TIF in this community. So what we had to do basically was make planning and zoning policy more hospitable to the developers who wanted it, by the way, who wanted to create denser environments. And then we also had to encourage we had to encourage investors as well to see that denser environment with a payoff at the end of the process. And I would have to tell you that it wasn't an easy conversation going through that redevelopment process, because these developers are dealing with constituencies that like their present circumstance. And so the displacement discussion that takes place is a pretty sensitive piece of the discussion that sometimes takes a year or two. I'll kind of sum that up by saying this new plan that we're doing for zoning and planning in the Nashville area has economic development as one key pillar, one of the four key pillars, and we've been spending a lot of time with the areas that are targeted for redevelopment to help them see the advantage to them to becoming a part of that denser area. But a lot of it's public policy related.
Well, Mayor Moore, maybe that's an opportunity for you to jump in. What are the sort of what are the implications that you see related to changing development?
Well, our developers, who I think are very high quality, they're very interested in more density. And the challenge for them is that land is very expensive in Franklin and Williamson County. And so for them to be able to make their numbers work, they have to have density. And as Ralph was saying, our zoning ordinance addresses many of those issues very specifically and guides the developer through the process so that we get a good product and they also get a good product that they're able to benefit from economically. We're excited about some of the new infill development that's going to occur in the core of our city, bringing more people downtown and continuing to make it a vibrant, alive core. And I think it's important, as many of the people have already said, that it's very important to make sure that the core of your city is viable and alive, because if it's not, your city is at a real disadvantage.
Could I just add one more thing to what I said earlier, and that is, for the developers, predictability and stability is really important. The ability to acquire space and then develop that space with some clearly articulated rules, regulations, and guidance is really important. For a while, we were finding that they did not find a predictability, because oftentimes as they met with planners, they felt that the rules and the specifications were changing without having been communicated. So I think a large part of the success of this redevelopment task force has been the opportunity to create a more predictable and stable environment for the developers, that with the planners making much more evident what the needs are in that particular space before they start their design processes.
That's great. Thank you. The next question I'm going to pose to Alana, and it is about rural communities. Obviously, New York and San Francisco are at the top of the list. They're the highest ranked, but they're also two of the largest cities in the country, if not the two largest cities in the country. And I guess the question is sort of, is this really just a ranking for cities, or what can rural communities do? How can rural communities still achieve a really good sprawl score?
Absolutely, and it's important to note one of the parts of the summary report that we posted separates out the highest scoring metro areas by the size of the metro areas. So you can look also at the top 10 scores of metro areas who have population less than 500,000. I understand that's not a small town yet, but it's at least moving in that direction. And in those metro areas and in others, there are many small towns, or it's an urban center for a larger rural area. It's important to look at how our rural towns are being protected and getting reinvested in. There is a wonderful dynamic in terms of being able to both protect our rural economy, reinvest in our rural economy, and invest in those towns. So for communities that are rural towns, I think there's a couple of important policies or steps to consider. One is to look at the business policies as well as the zoning policies to help protect the viable agricultural economy, and that means not just zoning for large enough parcels to be agricultural land, but also protecting the uses that go along with that, like the processing plants, to make sure that the whole agricultural economy can in fact be held in that area. I think it's also important to look at the codes for the towns themselves to make sure that reinvestment can happen in the downtown, that the town can be added onto at the appropriate scale, at its historical scale, and expanded upon, but still maintaining its rural character, its small town character. And that in many cases, the rural town, the economic reason for that rural town being there might have come and gone through the town, for instance, some of the southern old textile towns. And the community might need to really take a fresh look at what is its economic base, how to diversify it, and come at it from almost an economic gardening perspective of how do we support more people to create businesses within the local area to rebuild that local economy.
Great. And now as we're getting close to the end of our hour here, I think I'd like to ask a question for everyone on the panel. So Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you. And the question is, for cities that have done less well on the ranking, what strategies would you recommend from your perspective to the planners or the policy leaders in those places to improve their ranking moving forward? What strategies would you recommend for people to start in who want to improve their sprawl score ranking? So Elizabeth?
Well, I'm an urban planner, so I always want to promote, the benefits of planning and getting out in the community. And I think in some of these areas, some education would also be beneficial, so that if you're able to educate the public about the benefits of smart growth and, the health benefits, the economic benefits, and begin to train and educate your future citizen planners, then that can lead to the support for the types of plans and policies that we've been talking about this morning. So I think that's what I would recommend.
Great. And so Bill, same question to you. What would you recommend to improve a score?
Actually, I had a very, very similar answer when you asked the question. I think my initial reaction was more education, and more education of the public and of policymakers, because I think most people don't really think about the effects of sprawl that have been outlined in this report, for example. I think they just drive out and see more houses and more development going further and further out from the city core. And I think a lot of people just maybe kind of frown upon that, but don't really think about some of the other things that causes, like some of the health impacts, for example. And I think that a report like what we're talking about today just provides another opportunity to educate people about the impacts of sprawl.
Great. Mayor Moore, what would you recommend?
Well, I think the point about education is really a good one. Tennessee is not a very healthy state, and we need to do more to tie our land use planning to creating healthier neighborhoods and healthier communities, communities that are more walkable, more livable, rather than having to get in our cars. And so we're very cognizant of that and continue to work in that effort, and I think the public needs to be better informed about sprawl.
Okay. And Ralph?
Well, ditto on the communication strategy, although I would say that more and more Nashville, this region, is being populated by people that desire environments that aren't sprawl, that are denser environments. I guess for us, the primary need, and by the way, I'm taking notes on what you all say because we are 217th on the list. The marketplace is demanding density, and developers want to provide that density, and communication between planners and zoning officials and those investors and developers is really key, because as I return to a previous theme, they're looking for a return from their development, and what they need is a certain predictability and stability at the beginning of the process. And so I think for us, that's going to be a focal point, is maintaining that kind of communication between the investors and developers and the planning and the zoning officials.
Fantastic. Reed?
Yeah, thank you. So the sprawl indices have 4 components: density, land use mix, centering of employment and population, and street connectivity. So all 4 of those represent an opportunity to boost your scores on the compactness index. Density bonuses, urban growth boundaries, transit-oriented development, transit investment. Transit investment leads to higher densities, as we found. All will increase the density score, which then contributes to the overall compactness score. In terms of land use mix, going to codes, zoning codes that are less Euclidean, as they call it, that allow a mix of uses, as so many places have done. Form-based codes are an example of that, where mixed use is a default option rather than the exception, will help with mix. In terms of centering, downtown redevelopment efforts like those described by other speakers will help, and not just downtown, but also town centers outside of downtown. Many of the regional transportation plans now feature centers connected by transit. That will help. And then finally, on street connectivity, block size limitations for new development, connectivity standards like those adopted by the state of Virginia will help improve the score on street accessibility. So any of those things will bump up scores.
Great. And Alana?
Well, that's a wealth of information coming from our panel, and it is phenomenal to be surrounded by that kind of knowledge. For an even longer list of ideas and policies that your community can adopt, you can take a look at the Smart Growth America website. We have a number of different policy briefs available, and we also provide technical assistance for communities who are working on making these kinds of changes. If you have a local elected official who is interested in making these kinds of changes, you can send them our way as well, and we have all sorts of other assistance we can provide in that respect as well.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it with a call to visit our website for more information. I know that we didn't get to everybody's questions, but we will do our best to follow up in a subsequent blog post. We'll try to answer some of the questions that weren't able to be asked today. A recorded version of this webinar will also be available on our website in the next day or so at smartgrowthamerica.org. And again, you can view the full findings included in today's research at www.smartgrowthamerica.org/measuring sprawl. With that, I think we'd like to conclude today's call. Thank you, everyone, so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.